Welcome to Doing It My Way by Beata Matras, a podcast about project and product management, communication, brand, and IT. All these topics will definitely improve and have a positive impact on your career. So join me today, subscribe, and expect a new episode every week. Thank you. Today, I'm thrilled to host Pooja Vithlani, a visionary in product management, technology strategist, and author of The Product Manager's Power Up, Unlocking Essential Skills 1 month at a time. Pooja has not only led significant initiatives in companies like Microsoft, Expedia, Kitopi, and Kareem, but also founded a thriving community for women in product in MENA region. Today, she's here to share her journey, insights from her book, and how she's empowering the next generation of women leaders. It's a pleasure to have you in my podcast, Pooja.
The pleasure is all mine. Thank you so much for inviting me to be on your podcast, Beata. I'm really excited for this.
Yeah, thank you for accepting my invite. And maybe we can start from the first question. So, Pooja, could you walk us through your career journey and what drew you to specialize in product management within, especially within the tech industry?
Yeah, so I think I'll maybe date myself a bit with this story, but I kind of stumbled into product management. It was never something I set my eyes on or targets on to kind of get into. I came from a non-technical background. By the time I graduated university, I did a Bachelor of Commerce degree. So I was in business, and the internet was just really becoming widely usable at that time. And so that's when I started using it. I was working with a consultancy doing some research for them on the internet. And I thought, this is a really interesting space. I want to learn more about it. But I wasn't prepared to go back to school for university to kind of start over. So I found a really interesting program at a college near me, and I took that. And it just was the basics of, technology, of internet technology, of web, pre-app world. And it was such a great comprehensive program. So I did that, and I entered into a startup soon after that. And that startup, supporting some of the key account managers on that startup. And that led me to do, I guess, a version of product management with our clients. But it wasn't really called product management at the time. And it wasn't until I would say maybe my second or third year when I joined Microsoft eventually, that product manager title was something that I had. And even then, it wasn't a very defined role, I would say, at that time. Over the years, I would say it's become more and more defined what a product manager does. There's been more and more learnings, more and more science applied to it based on, what a lot of these companies are doing and learning and shaping along the way. So that's kind of how I ended up in product management within the tech industry itself.
Okay, so that wasn't planned. And I think, the best things happen when we are most spontaneous and do not plan it completely. So inspiring story. And it's also interesting that you didn't have a technical background, because very often, you can hear that a product manager has to be technical. And the more I speak to product people, the more I learn to know that, they don't have it. They learn it on the way.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where, of course, having a technical background is always helpful and useful. And depending on the kind of role you're in, there are certain degrees to which I think you can, get more technical and get the expertise, especially now that there's so much content available for you to pick up on and learn and, sign up with. And, whether you get formal training or informal education in it, there's lots of opportunities. I think with me, it was less about the technical aspect of things and more about the curiosity. What always drew me was the curiosity about not the technology, but about people and behaviors, and trying to understand what makes people do the things they do psychologically, and in the products that I've had the privilege of working on or with, or just the way things have evolved for me, that's actually been a really critical piece of product management itself. Really trying to build products that are going to get people to do the behaviors that, you're trying to get them to do for the business in a responsible way. And that kind of just sort of evolved into what it is today for a lot of products. I mean, obviously there are different types of products, but for me, I've always been drawn to those products because I've always been very curious. And even at Microsoft, even though I was in a product management role, I was always curious about, even marketing, like how does marketing get people to click on those ads, or what are the things that are really getting people to do what they're trying to get them to do, and really trying to reverse engineer that has always been super interesting to me. And then when you apply technology to that, and that's kind of, I think, a lot of a great hybrid of what makes a great product, right? You're bringing the value to somebody because they want to do the things that you're offering them to do with your technology. So yes, that's kind of how I've always approached it from my career.
Yeah, I really like this curiosity thing because that definitely drives us to learn more about users, technology, and everything in between. But what does a day in life of a product manager look like for you? And what are some of the biggest challenges that you're facing in this role? I mean, product manager, maybe it's a bad word because right now you're CPO, yeah?
Well, I guess these days, what I'm more so doing is helping senior executives and founders implement product management expertise. And I'm doing that kind of across a wide range of companies. So for me, no days are exactly the same. But interestingly, what I found is that the approaches and principles with doing hands-on product management are very much the same as what I do on a day-to-day basis. So I'll give you an example. When working with different clients, I really have to spend time understanding them, their business models, their goals, their problems, and challenges that they're facing. Right. So similarly to what we do in, product management, spending a lot of time in what I'd say is the equivalent of discovery phase of product management, really kind of understanding those problems and validating, are those the real problems that we should be solving? Then if I think about the synergies with product management with what I'm doing today as well, I really also have to flex my skills on empathy and building trust, right? The same way you'd have to build empathy for your users as a product manager and build trust with your stakeholders as a product manager. And I guess also, you have to be able to work with your clients to basically guide them through a product vision that aligns to their business vision, right, and their business objectives, and work with them to deliver on that vision, just as I would as a product manager when I was in more of a product manager type role. So in my case, in this role, that would probably involve really understanding the gaps or inefficiencies in their organizations and helping them, whether it's restructuring or hiring or implementing sound practices, upskilling their technology and product teams, and sharing best practices with them, basically ensuring that they're really optimizing their ways of working for efficiency to meet their goals and for scale ultimately. So a lot of that is what you do as a product manager, I think, and it's just really applying it in a different way so that you're using the same methodologies that you would in product development in many ways, but you're actually applying it at a much, I guess, higher level scale.
It sounds like the organization or the company is becoming your user, yeah? So you get to know them better. The same like in product management. And what I can also catch from what you just said is there is a lot of psychology, I would say, in product management, not only technology part, but also psychological part and relationship building, which
Absolutely.
is also a crucial skill.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly right.
And you created a book that offers a month by month guide to mastering essential skills in product management. What inspired you to write this book, and what impact do you hope it has on the readers?
It's a really great question. So if you'd asked me a year ago, I would have said I'm not somebody who writes books. And even this, I think I call it loosely a book because it's more like a workbook. But that really is the reason why I created it is, over the last several years, I've started noticing a bit of a skill gap. A lack of basically readily available skilled product managers, because I think the term product manager has become very open to interpretation. And then there are different variations of people in the field of product management. And so, what I started to notice is that many product managers, newer product managers, they seem to basically rely on checking a box by reading a couple of, general product management books. And then while these are all great resources, and oftentimes they're actually very focused on advanced topics, much more sophisticated frameworks that you'd maybe use later in your career. They actually skipped over the foundational skills development. And I found in my experience that this led to situations where product managers would throw around terminology that they learned from these books and, these buzzwords without really, knowing how to apply them or integrating these learnings into their daily work and what they were doing on a day-to-day basis. And they were missing the essential building blocks of product management. And oftentimes, if a company isn't very mature and they're hiring product managers and their leadership doesn't have that product management background, they may not be equipped to really identify or address these gaps in product management. So what I really wanted to do was think about how can I help close that gap on a broader scale. And I wanted to create what I thought of as more of a workbook style guide, basically allowing product managers to truly understand what are the fundamental skills you need to be a product manager and how you and allow them to really be able to apply those skills as in a very streamlined manner and kind of giving focus to each skill. So really 1 month at a time kind of idea. So each chapter basically focuses on a specific skill. It explains its importance, demonstrates its impact through real world examples. And oftentimes I've also put in exercises for each one for the readers to implement in a real world scenario in their workplace. And so the idea is the spaced repetition basically allows them to build on these skills over, like I said, a manageable time frame. So 1 year, you could kind of really focus on each skill, developing each skill over 12 chapters, rather than just sort of reading it, tossing it aside, and going back to kind of working the way you've been working. And I guess that the other reason I also wanted to, what led me to create this book is, for some reason, product management has become very, can be, but from what I've heard, a very glamorous sounding role. But, those of us who are in product management, we know the reality, has a lot of challenges, right? So, you effective product managers, you need to leverage data and insights, to drive the product direction, even in the face of, strong opinions from senior executives, right? So things like gaining trust from your stakeholders can be really difficult. And if they lack the product management expertise and experience that gives them the skills to really, address these challenges when they come up, they're going to have unrealistic expectations of what the job is. And because the job can be so challenging, I feel like for myself, I like to have I like to give myself read inspirational quotes every now and again to get me through those challenging times. So I included these monthly mantras and daily affirmations just to help product managers as they're going through the challenging moments, stay focused on those skills that they're learning and kind of keep them at the center of their thoughts for the day, essentially.
Yeah, and I really like the idea of affirmations and mantras. Because I'm using those daily. We all need empowerment on a daily basis. Our minds are very often focusing on negativity. So every day you have to remind yourself to be grateful and also to remember about important things like the empathy for the users, for example, the first chapter of your workbook is focusing on. And this is a very interesting idea. I think it's the first book I've ever, the first book on product management that actually also touches the topic of mindset, I would say, because you can possess skills. Yeah. You can learn skills, the tools and everything, it's everywhere. Yeah. It lies on the floor. It's on the internet. There is a massive amount of resources about tools. But the problem with tools is that sometimes we cannot use them because we don't have a mindset of, for example, not being afraid to fail. Yes?
Yeah, exactly. And I think also there's a tendency to, when you get a tool or a framework, sometimes that becomes the only way to look at it. You know what I mean? And when you shift to mindset, you can open up the views on how you might approach something differently. Those frameworks are tools that you can pick from and pull from, but they're not the only things you should be doing. And the reason I think so many great books come along is because technology evolves, and product management is an evolving field as well. And so new frameworks, better ways of doing things, different ways of doing things, are always shared as best practices and across in these great books, which are great tools, but they may not apply to every single thing you're doing. And then you may have something so unique that comes along that it gives you the opportunity. If you start with the mindset, it gives you the opportunity to create a framework or a tool with all the knowledge you have, including the other frameworks you've looked at and are aware of, that works for you. And then that can be added to the overall, plethora of best practices and tools that are out there for everybody to access and use and learn from. So it really enables that creativity and the ability to really evolve as well.
Definitely, totally agree. You can then like find something unique in yourself and follow that. Yeah. And could you share maybe like one or two key pieces of advice from your book that you believe that every product manager should implement in their career?
I think, well, maybe not directly from the book. There are, I would say, two crucial pieces of advice, I would say, based on the book's core purpose, as I mentioned. One is basically trying to avoid simply becoming an operator that blindly executes tasks without applying proper product management methodology to your daily practices. So, this could, and this again goes back to maybe organizations that don't have the maturity in product management technology, are kind of newer in that space. It might involve really educating your organization on the true role of a product manager and really championing the necessary changes that you need to make to build successful and scalable products. So maybe that's sort of one thing where, if you really can grasp the foundations and practice them and become experts in product management, because then you will see just applying that mindset, applying the skills, applying the frameworks, all the knowledge you have, your products become more and more successful, much more higher growth products. You become the expert in this area. I would say the second thing would be, just reminding people that simply reading a book, including my own book, workbook, it won't suffice. You have to actively apply those skills and learn from your day-to-day work. In my career, part of my career in the US, most of my career in the US, I was really fortunate to work in organizations that really focused on providing training skills for product managers. And not only did they do that, but they held you accountable for applying them. So, your success in the company was dependent on how well you were applying the skills they were expecting you to have. And they provide you all the tools to learn them as well. But unfortunately, not all organizations are like that. And that's not always the case. So, in the case of my book, the whole purpose was to equip you to hold yourself accountable and actively integrate acquired skills into your daily practices, even if your organization lacks that sort of formal support system.
Okay. Yeah, I totally agree with trying to be the operator and acting and applying the skills that you read about before, because without applying them, obviously we cannot possess the true skill, which is not always easy, yeah, because we have so many resources, so many books, so many courses, and sometimes we stuck in these courses and do not actually move on to implementation. So that's very close to my heart, and thank you very much for these advices.
Of course.
And now I would like to move to the topic of building and supporting women's communities in MENA region. You are the founder, of the community of women in product in MENA region. Can you share more about this initiative, this community, and why women communities are important for the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. This is something very near and dear to my heart. So I founded the MENA Women Product Managers Guild. That's the name of the community. Specifically after I noticed a pattern while I was mentoring product managers. So what I noticed was that the challenges that were faced by men and women in product management were really quite distinct. Men, I found, often focused on mastering specific skills or delivering successful projects in the effort to kind of, continue to climb the corporate ladder, so to speak. Women, on the other hand, most of the women I spoke to, they frequently, grappled with issues of career advancement, primarily due to being overlooked for their contributions or, in some cases, unconscious bias within their organizations. And they also in many cases struggle still with the fear of speaking up or navigating situations where their skills are kind of undervalued. So, in having a lot of these mentoring sessions, I kind of noticed this disparity, and I started to recognize a critical need for a support system and platform for women in product management to share their experiences and empower each other. Now, obviously, we know that women are still the minority when it comes to product management tech as a whole, and in this region, that's even more so the case. Which is why I wanted to create something specifically regionally focused, because I know that there are female product managers out there, and if we create a network of women who can support each other and share their experiences and learnings and advice with each other, then it can only help women as a whole in product management in the ecosystem thrive. So that was really the basis of the guild itself. So that's kind of the background on it.
And I want to touch a little bit on the personal aspect here, because yeah, I agree that as women we are very often overlooked, biased, and have a fear of speaking up. But this is something, and this is something connected to definitely to imposter syndrome, and I'm spending a lot of time on fighting that, because to be honest, like I'm experiencing that on a regular basis. This is like my imposter syndrome and fear of failure, and other little gremlins are my friends. But I'm trying to of course, work on that.
It's very normal. Everyone has it. Yeah.
Yeah, everyone has it, but I kind of see, as I speak to many women, I see that we very often are following the imposter syndrome and do not act, while men, they are actually having imposter syndrome, but they are better at hiding that, and they act even if they are scared. Yeah. So definitely, like I really. Like have you also experienced the imposter syndrome? Do you have that? Have you like worked on that, or have any like magical recipe how to deal with that?
Here's what I would say, because the imposter syndrome thing, it's a term I hear really frequently, especially when mentoring people, mostly women, to your point, really suffer from that. What I would say is, I think that what we don't tend to look at oftentimes is what we've accomplished. And, as a product manager, my default is to look at the data, right? So I look at the data and I'll say, okay, what have I achieved in my career so far? And the data, like the what you've achieved is a set of data and metrics, right? That you can look at and say, okay, if I got to this place where I am today, and I can show, the products I've built have or been contributed to have had X amount of growth. I've impacted the business in X, Y, and Z ways. That experience in and of itself should be enough to eliminate your imposter syndrome, because you got to where you are as a result of what you've done up until now. And I think the thing with imposter syndrome, oftentimes, I don't think it's so much imposter syndrome. I think that term is used very widely, but I think it's more so this exactly what you said, this fear of failing in the position you're in, right? It's more about, hey, maybe I'm scared of failing, and then you start to have this self-doubt of, maybe it's because I don't deserve this, I didn't accomplish this, or whatever the case is. Whereas I always encourage people, when they talk to me about having this imposter syndrome, is number one, just take a beat and look back at everything you've accomplished. And by the way, within there, you'll see a bunch of failures too, if you're really honest with yourself, and look at what you accomplished despite your failures. And then you'll just see, look, like it doesn't matter, because failure is a part of growth anyway. I mean, there's nobody in this world who hasn't failed. I myself have failed multiple times. I fail on a daily basis on something or the other, right? And it's this idea of failing forward. So as long as you're learning from your failures and it's contributing to your successes in the future, it's a journey, it's a path, right? And you always get to that place where you are today because of all of the things you've accomplished in the past, whether they're failures, they're successes, all of that stuff. But in looking back, when people start to have the doubt of the fear of failure and start thinking, oh, maybe I'm having imposters, like maybe it's imposter syndrome, I think at that point, when you start thinking it's imposter syndrome, shine the light on all the accomplishments. When you have the fear of failure, shine the light on all your past failures and see how they led to your accomplishments. And you kind of start switching that around and start building that confidence if you do it in a very conscious way. At least, when I've advised people to do it that way, they've come back and said, hey, actually, that's really helped me move out of that zone and think forward, And, for me, like on a personal note, I think I personally, what I did very early in my career, because oftentimes I was the only woman in a room of men, and I started my early in my careers, and I was in rooms filled with very accomplished, high pedigree individuals, and they were mostly men, and I did a lot of what we do as product managers as well. Just observe, how are they behaving, how do they act, what and like you said, sometimes they lead with confidence, and it may not be real confidence; they'll fake it, but I learned to just embrace that too and be like, okay, this is how they got the attention of the room. This is how their voice was heard. I'm going to approach it the same way. So I took what I thought was working through observing things and applied them in certain situations like the boardroom. Hard thing is switching it off. You have to kind of learn when to switch it off and on, because in personal situations, that might not be your approach, right? You want to kind of be a little bit more softer and fun and, chilled out versus boardroom style person. So I'm a Gemini, so I can switch relatively easily, but yeah, it is challenging sometimes, and I had to learn to do that.
Okay. Oh, I'm taking that with me. Actually, this is a great advice to observe and to to observe and to act like people. Actually, when I was like in Korea, I started like first I was like super afraid because I went like solo there, and then I started like observing people, how they behave, what they are wearing. I changed my like a little bit of the things I took with myself and came back with like a different wardrobe. But I felt like I need to do that. Yeah, but I felt like I need to kind of do that to like blend in a little bit, and to to interact with these people on the same level. Yeah,
That's
like
right.
so they do not see a stranger in me; they see an ally.
That's right.
So
yeah, that's really great. That's a really great analogy. Yeah.
We talked about the mentoring. So how has mentorship played a role in your career? How do you approach mentoring others in product management?
It's a great question. I love talking about mentoring. Mentorship has played a huge, huge role in my career journey. I've been incredibly fortunate to have had many, many amazing and highly accomplished mentors, both officially and unofficially. And in fact, I would say more unofficially than officially. I think sometimes mentorship becomes a formal, like really formalized, and people get a little bit nervous about, this is my mentor and I should prepare something and show them and whatever. But I actually think the more informal, unstructured conversations, those are the ones where I got the most out of my mentors, just sort of like going for a casual coffee. And these are mentors who I'm sure many of them don't even realize they were my mentors. They're just like, oh, that's just Pooja and I having a coffee. But it's people, I think, just identifying people who it's not necessarily, people often think it's somebody whose position you would like to be in one day. And that's one type of mentor, sure. But I think it's also people who you admire the way they've navigated certain things, or the way you've seen them handle certain situations, or speak up in places where you can't speak, whatever your challenges might be, or something you want to emulate, mimic, learn from, right? Somebody who comes up with really creative ideas. It doesn't have to be a product manager. It could be somebody in a totally different space that you could really, get a different perspective from. And for me, the guidance of my mentors has been invaluable in me, not only helping me reflect in my own approaches, but they've provided me inspiration, and ultimately they've really helped me shape my career path. So now, going to your other question, as a mentor myself, I kind of strive to pay it forward by offering the same kind of support I received. So I really focus on creating a safe space for open communication with anyone I'm being a mentor for, or just grabbing a coffee with, if they're opening up an honest dialogue and sharing some of their challenges. Just try to encourage them to identify their goals and challenges, and then really try to help, provide some coaching to help them make some decisions if they're struggling with that, and really develop strategies to help them achieve their aspirations, essentially.
You said something about official and unofficial. You said about unofficial and official mentoring. And while I'm doing this podcast, like initially it started, of course, to give the knowledge, not only like spread the knowledge to other people and get to know some product management, for example, strategies. But the more I'm doing that, the more I'm learning also, and I treat like every conversation as a separate mentoring session, and
Mhm.
that's really amazing. And I think it's a kind of unofficial mentoring what I'm doing. So
That's really
yeah, thank you for making me like realize that also. And if we can come back for a while to the challenges that women face in tech industry, because we spoke about it a
right.
little bit, you spoke
Yeah.
about it a little bit, but from your experience, what are these unique challenges that women face, and how they can navigate these challenges successfully?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, beyond the well-known issues like, gender pay gap and, you know, those kinds of things, I feel like the challenges that women face in tech are often quite distinct from those faced by men. As I mentioned through some of the mentoring sessions I also did, and I think this stems in part from, the inherent differences between, communication styles and societal expectations of, between men and women. And unfortunately, the unconscious bias against women in product and tech is still prevalent, right? Like it's there every day. I've experienced it, recently, and hear about people experiencing it recently. Um, so as a product manager, like, knowing these biases, they can lead to feelings of isolation oftentimes for women, especially if there's a lack of strong support system, especially because women are still the minority in these cases. And so, some of these things I've noticed, and I think we've touched a little bit on it in terms of like observing how people are behaving around you. But I think I've just always been very aware of those kinds of things and just observing people's behaviors. Like I said, it's kind of been the catalyst of my whole career, like just trying to figure out why people behave the way they behave. It's just been something I inherently do. But one of the key observations I've made is, you know, between men and women as well, is sort of like that difference in camaraderie. Men often have a more established network of colleagues within and outside their organizations, and they're very kind of, they can get away with very casual interactions and can sometimes, even involve assertive behavior. And that behavior is perceived very differently between men than it is between if a woman were to do the same thing or say the same thing or behave the same way with men. So I think there are these very, I wouldn't say subtle, but I would say so under the surface things which are happening that really translate into, feeding into the differences and the fact that we're not yet at that equal stage of and not just the parity in number of women in tech organizations as a whole, but in the behaviors within organizations as well, which are just inherently there because of the way organizations are built and the way people interact with each other. Men interact with men in different ways than men interact with women. Women don't necessarily create the same camaraderie as men do. It's taken very differently when a woman says something in a certain way versus when a man says the exact same thing. And I can give you an example, like in my career, I've had, earlier in my career, throughout my career, at some point or the other, I'm sure, the term aggressive has been used, which is a term which I never have used in giving feedback to a man or a woman, because that same behavior, if a man was to, to do the exact same thing, that term is never used with a man, right? Not to my knowledge, right? So I feel like it's one of those things where, just being very aware of those little things that are used in different ways for women, to describe women or to provide feedback for women that are acceptable terms versus for men. Just starting with those small things and just cutting them off one by one. That's kind of how I've approached it. So yeah, so I think that's where I look at sort of organizationally. We have a ways to go, but there's a lot of it's not just the community I've developed, but there are a lot of other communities that are coming up to support women in tech in general and product. And I think that's a really great thing. I mean, there's still work to do, but it's really great to see these other communities coming together, because I think the network is a really important part of making sure that women feel supported, safe space to speak about issues that they may not feel comfortable speaking about, with other colleagues who may not have the same challenges that they're facing, and places where people can openly share advice and help each other work through those. And together, a larger voice also helps propel change. So.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, about also what you said about the kind of double standards. Yeah, like the behaviors of men, they're seen like as confident,
Yeah.
whereas women can be seen as bossy or, as you said, like aggressive,
Yeah.
which is sometimes we just want to be more direct. Yeah, than
That's right.
just not talking about something. We just want to like explain easily things,
Yeah.
and not being arrogant or bossy or
Yeah.
dominant, for example, or
Right.
even like aggressive. We just want to say what we mean. Yeah. And
Mm.
but
And
it
those
needs a
things
lot of awareness.
people sometimes, like you say what you want to say, but because I think a lot of women, we're afraid to step out of that. What we've been taught is the appropriate way to be, right? You shouldn't be as, I
Mm,
mean, again, different people, different upbringings, whatever. But in many cases, a lot of women are taught to be, softer, gentler, say it with a smile, say it with a laugh. And I know that sounds really old school, but it still is fundamentally something that, is inherently there, unfortunately, still in society. So when you do speak up sometimes and you are direct and you are, you don't do it with a giggle or a smile, or you just kind of like, this is what I think, and I'm going to be super direct about it. And you say it, and I've myself experienced it. It catches some men off guard, they just don't know how to handle because it's the first time they've actually experienced it, and they're a little confused at first. But again, I'm not saying that's all men. I'm not saying any of that stuff. Like, I have really great, mentors and friends and colleagues and stuff that are men that aren't like that. But I'm just saying, as a whole, a lot of women still experience that quite a bit. So it's just sort of like getting past that, really, and being comfortable and practicing being open, direct, and not apologetic for speaking your truth, essentially, or sharing what you really feel is the right direction to go in, or whatever the case is, as long as you're remaining professional about it.
yes, yes. Being like staying professional is an important part, yet like being authentic and like true
Yeah.
to yourself. Yeah, as we're like wrapping up, maybe we can come back to the product management and talk a little bit about the challenges and looking ahead. So, do you see any trends in shaping the future of product management? How can product managers prepare for these changes?
Yeah, that's a really great question, actually, because obviously, as you know, the tech industry is like really rapidly evolving, and I think we're in this one phase where it's happening right before our eyes again. And I do believe that product management is still at the forefront of this change. So key trends, I guess I see for the future of product management. I would say, obviously, the rise of AI. That's already here in many instances, and it's already playing a growing role in product development. And so, product managers are just going to need to leverage their AI skills for tasks, that they're doing: data analysis, user behavior prediction, product ideation, all these things. They should use those learn to use AI in their favor to help them be more productive. And really, I think understanding how to work effectively with AI tools is going to be essential, and already is essential. Beginning to be essential, I would say. I think also, as with the rise of AI, and as it becomes more integrated into product development, ethical considerations are going to become also paramount for product managers to, basically champion responsible AI to use, ensure products are designed really with fairness, transparency, and user privacy, in mind altogether. The other thing, I think, these are probably things that have existed but will continue to remain at the forefront as these new trends emerge, is really this idea of, as we know, data always being critical to product management. But again, its role will probably become even more crucial, because I think product managers are going to have to become more comfortable with translating data insights into actionable product decisions, as they have been up until now, but even more so because with the rise of AI, there's going to be even more data available to us. So making sure that we're very thorough about that. And of course, with new technologies coming in, customer expectations are also going to evolve and grow. And so I think it's, as always, it's going to still remain important for product managers to really stay ahead of the curve by constantly innovating and, creating exceptional user experiences as they continue to develop product.
Yeah, definitely. Like touching this topic of customer expectations, I remember on one of the conferences, someone mentioned that, well, right now AI is a like nice to have, but at some point it will become a must have, yeah, for every product.
Yeah.
So that really aligns nicely with what you just said, customer expectations and also like AI.
Yeah.
And yeah, last questions for before we close. For those aspiring to climb the product management ladder and be successful as you are, what actionable steps would you recommend to take to advance their careers?
I think there's maybe a few things. Thank you, first of all, but I would say a few things. I would say really the focus on building a strong foundation in product management is so critical. Again, leapfrogging or trying to shortcut or fast track it. That experience is what's going to, I think people will peak at some point and realize they can't go beyond that because, the experience really is important in terms of understanding, product life cycle, user research, product strategy, product development. And, there's so many resources available to help people just grasp those fundamentals. So I think people shouldn't be in a rush to kind of climb the ladder, just really learn it really, really well so that climbing the ladder just becomes natural because if you go in with that mindset and that growth mindset, at some point you're going to be like, okay, I got this. I need the next challenge. And that next challenge comes with growth, both from a career perspective and with, just the continuous growth in your own development. I would also say, like, for people aspiring probably to get into product management, I would really encourage them to, learn product management by just doing it, like looking for opportunities to intern or to work at a company that builds products that they're passionate about. Internship and rotations. I used to do, maybe introducing the concept of product rotations within the organization and championing that so you can spend a few months with product management and really learn the ropes and see if it's really what you thought it was going to be. And then, of course, developing their network. Networking is critical in terms of connecting with product managers, not just a support system, but, you learn from others, you can find new opportunities through others, you can stay up to date on the latest trends in product management through others. So that's also a really critical component, I would say, for people who want to kind of grow and that mindset, like I said, of just continuously learning and growing, that growth mindset, because product management is just constantly evolving. So, making sure you're always learning new things, reading books, articles, taking courses, there's so many available, attending conferences that are relevant, with the mindset of you're doing it to learn and grow, not to just network.
Yeah. So focus on building strong foundations, learn by doing the product work, either for internships or any rotations, and the growth mindset. Yeah, the growth mindset is something crucial. And networking. Yeah, almost forgot about networking. That's also a skill, and that's also important part of product management, as we do not have a direct authority very often, and we need to know how to build strong relationships. And as we look ahead, what's next for you, Pooja? Are there any upcoming projects or initiatives, both personal or professional, that you would like to share?
Yeah. So, I'm still really energized by the work I'm doing, working with various exciting product initiatives and, with leading organizations and even with some influential startup enablers in the region to really kind of spread the product goodness across the region. So, my aim is to basically empower startups with sound product approaches to maximize their success. But recently, I've also joined as co-founder of a startup here, which I'm very, very excited for. It's an early stage prop tech startup. And I've joined alongside my two brilliant co-founders to do that. So in addition to that, I'm also partnering with an amazing organization that's going to also bring more product related career opportunities to the region. So I've got my fingers in a few different things, but I'm really having fun with it and enjoying it. And then other than that, I didn't travel too much during and after the pandemic. Actually, took a bit of a hiatus from traveling. And this year, I've really I'm picking it up again. So recently, I did a trip to India, which was after 16 years of being to India, which was really cool. Yeah, and I had to fill out the visa, and they're like, "Where have you been the last 10 years?" I'm like, "Oh gosh, I have to. It doesn't even fit on the page." So it was an interesting one. But it was kind of cool to go back. And next week, I think I was mentioning to you, I'm going to Hong Kong. That kind of cropped up. And then I've got a couple of trips with my family planned in the summer. So doing throwing a little bit of travel in there as well. So I'm excited for that on a personal front.
That sounds like a lot of initiatives, a lot of exciting initiatives and fun. The question that comes to my mind is like, how do you find time to do that? Oh, well, yeah, but I guess you have endless amount of energy.
Well, I think sometimes when, and I'm sure you can relate to this because you do things you love, but when you're doing things you love, somehow it doesn't feel like you're working, you just find time to do something really interesting, cool. Like, don't worry, I'll make the time, and somehow you find it.
Yeah, definitely. And for those who are interested in learning more about your book or engaging with the communities you support or seeking mentorship, where they can find you and how they can get involved.
Oh, okay, great question. So for getting in touch with me, LinkedIn, my domain is Pooja Vithlani at the end, LinkedIn. You can just search me on LinkedIn. Also for the MENA Women Product Managers Guild, we're also on LinkedIn. So you just have to search MENA. I know it's a mouthful, but MENA Women Product Managers Guild. And you can reach out to us there. You can even just send me a personal message and we'll get you set up. And then the copy of the book you can find on Amazon. You just have to search the Product Managers Power Up, and it's available right there.
Okay, so I'll add all the links to the episode description so our listeners can find it easily. Thank you very much for the meeting today, for the conversation, Pooja. And wishing you a lot of success and hope to meet you soon in person.
I hope so. I'm looking forward to hosting you in Dubai. So thank you so much for having me. It's been really, really fun.
Thanks for joining me on another episode of Doing It My Way by Beata Matras. If you enjoyed this episode, please do not forget to subscribe. Remember, this podcast is a dynamic journey and your feedback is very welcomed. Connect with me on social media. I would like to hear your thoughts, questions, and topic suggestions. And stay tuned for upcoming episodes. And until next time, keep doing it your way.